I'm great. I'm living. Good morning. Let's get this party started. Actually, the party is clearly already started, but maybe we should start the educational program. Good morning. It is so good to see you all here today. Welcome to the first real Field Day, New England's Conference on Landscape Architecture. As far as I know, this is our first truly regional landscape architecture conference. Only about 112 years in the making, so this day is going to be really good. I am thrilled to welcome you all to Field Day this morning. Those of you here with us in the inspiring ISIC complex at Northeastern University in Boston, and welcome to all of you who are watching online too. We are here today thinking about the interface between people and planet. During this challenging moment in our nation, I invite you to take a deep breath and settle in to this community. I invite you to make moments to listen to each other, to challenge and question each other, to be inspired by each other, and to applaud and support as we discuss what is and think together about what might be. We're in a moment in a much longer story of this place. We're on the original homeland of the Pawtucket people and the Mashpee Wampanoag, Aquinnah Wampanoag, Nipmuc, and Massachusetts tribal nation. We extend our respect and affirmation to the present-day members of these communities, to the descendants of the earliest inhabitants of this land. We celebrate the enduring historical, cultural, and contemporary significance of Indigenous peoples whose heritage is intertwined with the lands that later became known as the Americas. And we are humbled and inspired as we strive as a landscape architecture community to steward this environment for generations to come. Please help me in saying hello and thank you to these sponsors whose financial support helped bring us together. And thank you to Northeastern for hosting. We're so grateful that you're part of our community. Today is a community production in every way. I want to give a shout out to the students in our audience and to the students who are actually out there in the atrium still welcoming folks coming in. If you're a current student or if you've just graduated, please raise your hand. And yeah, we've got a few in here, so they're actually all, there's a whole bunch working here today. We have 18 student volunteers from most of our landscape architecture and design programs helping to make this day run smoothly. And we have students, faculty, and alumni from these programs in our speaker mix too. Even if you feel awkward or shy, please say hello. So I'll start. My name is Gretchen Rubinkin. I'm Executive Director of the Boston Society of Landscape Architects. And as most of you know, the Boston chapter includes all of Massachusetts and Maine. Our funny name is part of our history. We're 112 years old. The first local chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects, which is celebrating its 126th birthday this year. By 1913, our growing group of New England heroes decided that they didn't want to travel to New York for meetings anymore. Boo, nix. And so the local chapters were born. Early chapter activities included regular meetings as well as field days. And here we are. So on behalf of our BSLA and our New England colleagues, the ASLA chapters of Rhode Island, New Hampshire, Vermont, and Connecticut, we are so honored to have you here. Welcome. We are a community. You'll be hearing from chapter presidents from each chapter throughout the morning, but first let's ground this gathering in connecting with each other. So please take a moment and say hello to the person in front of you, or maybe the person behind you. All right, awesome, great, I love it. I'm sorry I need to ask you to come back because we're on a tight timeline here. But this is good. Keep those conversations going all day. Chaos, mayhem. Here we go. I'm about to say we invite you to connect with each other throughout the day, and I'm so glad that it has started in such a lively way, and to connect with our chapter leaders, too. And so to that end, I'm pleased to invite BSLA President Michelle Crowley and Connecticut Chapter President Sean Reagan to the podium and share a few thoughts. Again, welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Gretchen. Thank you, Billy Craig in the back there, for all the work that you've done to bring us together today. I'm Michelle Crowley, President of the BSLA, and I'm here with Sean Reagan, President of the Connecticut Chapter. On behalf of all of the New England ASLA chapters, welcome to Fieldday 2025. Whether you work in residential gardens or regional parks, on rooftops or waterfronts, in cities or forests, you are part of this amazing, creative, and slightly sunburn-prone community. We don't get to gather like this very often, so let's take a moment to recognize the people who keep our chapters running. If you are able, please stand and stay standing as I call your group. First, if you're a current or past chapter president, please stand. Next, current or former trustees, treasurers, secretaries, executive committee members, also please stand. Stay standing. Presidents, stay standing. And finally, if you've ever chaired a committee, planned an event, shown up for Advocacy Day, visited a school, juried awards, or volunteered in any way, please stand up. This is great. Take a moment and look around. This is the ecosystem that makes our profession thrive. Give yourselves a big round of applause. This kind of personal commitment is what inspired me to step into this role. I'd love to see the whole room standing next year. So thank you all for showing up, for stepping up, and for helping build this fantastic community. Fieldday reflects your passion and your hard work, and it fuels everything we do to create a more livable world. So dive into the sessions, ask questions, connect with your peers, and most of all, enjoy the day. And with that, I'll turn to Sean.
Thank you, Mish. On behalf of the New England chapters, we are excited to be joining arms with the other chapters to further establish Fieldday as a regional conference of landscape architecture. We are enthused by the collective energy and talents in this room, represented by the panelists, chapter leadership, the guests, and yourself, the attendees. And we are excited by the confluence of community knowledge and professional support we offer one another. So thank you for being here today. As a community of landscape architecture and a community of American Society of Landscape Architecture, we are thrilled to welcome our national ASLA president, Kona Gray, who has traveled through severe weather up the eastern coast to get here, from Florida to Baltimore, and finally has arrived. And let's give him a warm welcome.
Good morning. Let's try that again. Good morning. I'm so pleased to be here. As Sean noted, I do travel a lot, as you can imagine, but I love it because I get to see you. It's really meaningful. Yeah, it means a lot. I know, we're gonna, It means a lot. This is probably the most wonderful thing about this role is that I get to go to chapters and talk to folks and see old friends, meet new friends. It's fabulous. So welcome to Fieldday. I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention how important it is for us to be together. Because in these times, it's been really, really crazy, and we do need each other. So again, my name is Kona Gray. I'm a principal and shareholder with EDSA Incorporated, and I'm also the 80th president, as you know, of the Landscape Architecture Foundation. I'm sorry, the American Society of Landscape Architects. I've done that before too. It's an honor to join you today to celebrate our wonderful profession. Also, I'm excited to be back in Boston. Some of you may not know, I was born in Cambridge. Yeah. So this is a real treat to come back. You know, I drove by Wally's. I used to live down the street on West Springfield Street, and I love this area. I love the South End. So it's really marvelous to see how it's come along. So, as you know, which was mentioned earlier, we have been navigating a significant amount of disruptive uncertainty so far this year. Yet we are staying focused to our mission to elevate the profession and strategically, remember that word, strategically advance our organization to support our community. ASLA remains steadfast in our mission to advocate for landscape architecture professionals. And I want to pause there for a minute. Think about it. Landscape architecture professionals, all of us, right? I'm not just talking about landscape architects. I'm not just talking about, educators, et cetera. I'm talking about all of us. Because it's important that we continue to advance climate resilience and champion equitable, community-driven design. It's very important. These principles are the foundation of our work as outlined in our Vision 2030. And they will continue to guide us as we evolve with all of the federal policy changes affecting our profession. We are taking deliberate, strategic action to protect our members' interests and uphold our values. So I want you to know that our approach is not reactive. That's very intentional. Our approach is meant to lead with intention to ensure ASLA's efforts are effective and disciplined and aligned with our long-term goals. So currently we're focusing on protecting funding. We're focusing on supporting public practitioners. Who are my public practitioners in the room? NPS, anybody Forest Service, federal workers? Yes, we're supporting you. Defending design freedom, affirming climate action, and championing diversity and representation for all. And one last thing we're doing is, we're trying to find the wins where we can, right? There are a lot of changes to the tax code and things of that nature, and so we're all over it. We want to help strengthen your businesses. So that's critical to us. If you want more information, please go to our website, check out our 2025 through 2027 strategic plan, our ASLA industry report, and the ASLA Fund annual report to find a little bit more. And so these words truly inspire me from Martin Luther King. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are we doing for others? What are we doing for others? So let's help each other. So I have a question for you. Do you guys remember Fieldday? You remember Fieldday? Like before the summer started, you can go and have a lot of fun. It's exciting to enjoy Fieldday together and really cool to introduce our next person here. So I'm going to introduce Samantha. Governor Mills appointed Samantha Horn as director of the Maine Office of Community Affairs in October 2024. Horn has 3 decades of experience in policy, planning, and science, including consulting on public stakeholder engagement, policy work, and planning and siting for development projects. Prior to starting her career in her consulting business, she was a director of science for the Nature Conservancy in Maine and worked in state natural resources agencies for nearly 20 years, including more than a decade in leadership roles at the Maine Land Use Planning Commission. Samantha has a master's degree in the human dimensions of fish and wildlife conservation from the University of Massachusetts Amherst, and a bachelor's degree in biology and English literature from Washington University in St. Louis. Please welcome Samantha.
Good morning. I'm so glad to be here today. I think I have a slide advancer. There we go. I am going to try walking around. Can you all hear me? Yes. Okay, wonderful. So I'm here from Maine today, and I'm going to talk about rural places. But I think this applies to more than just Maine. I think many of you have rural places in the state that you're from. And so I'm going to talk about Maine because that's a place I know, but I hope you'll think about all the rural places that are near you, and then later maybe you can tell me about them and what connections you see. I also want to say that I'm particularly glad to be here today, which is due to my friend Jamie. Partly because I have a real fondness for the landscape architecture profession, which goes back to my mom having done some landscape architecture classes when she was doing consulting. And she did consulting in the Boston area, and she really had this deep love of really well-made places, and that she communicated that to me all the time. And there were also some really good stories, like being chased out of fields by bulls and all the other things that come along with field work. But it's a wonderful profession. I really admire what you do, and so I'm really pleased to be here. So I'm going to talk briefly about Maine. We have a lot of different faces. We've got some prosperous villages. Maybe you've visited one of them on a vacation, or maybe you are from one of them originally, or you have parents who live in one. We also have a lot of working forest. There are lots of places in Maine that are timberland, and that is a huge part of our economy. We have small rural towns spread through a lot of our state. And we have working waterfronts. When you add up all the jigs and jags along the coast, it's thousands of miles. It's as if you took the whole eastern seaboard and crunched it up into a ball of paper and measured it, and that would be thousands of miles of working waterfront and shoreline in Maine. And I based on where the wind turbines are, I think this is Mars Hill up in Aroostook County, but we have a lot of agriculture. The canola fields in the spring are gorgeous. And then, of course, some places where you can be entirely alone. Maine's ecological and recreational importance is stunning. Brook trout and salmon swim in the streams that run through small towns. And we're a superhighway for plants and animals traveling north up the spine of the Appalachians as temperatures warm. Because we're blessed with so many privately owned lands that are still open to the public, much of our economy runs on tourism. We are a natural resource-based place. You'll notice I didn't show you any pictures of cities. Of course, we have cities. I hope you've visited some of our wonderful urban places. But today I'm going to talk to you about our rural places and their efforts to be resilient, and in particular, the role of landscape architects in those resilience efforts. Here's a map of the public roads in Maine. Maine is one of the most rural states in the country. We have about 10 million acres that is so sparsely populated, there is no local government, and only about 12,000 people live in those 10 million acres. In between the cities and the unorganized territories lie the rural villages, the farming communities, the working waterfront, mill towns that are going strong, some that are trying to find a new future, and some that already have. One thing they have in common is that they are trying to get stronger in the face of a lot of difficult challenges brought on by a changing climate and a changing economic future. We had a couple of winters recently that were particularly devastating. The winds were strong, and they came from directions that our coastal communities have never had to deal with before. Structures that were built to withstand wind from one direction got hit from the other direction and collapsed. Our river valley cities and towns were devastated by rain that fell so fast and for so long that we had massive damage. I'm sure this is probably true for many of the states that you represent today. Beloved shorefront infrastructure was carried away. Even state highways, this is State Route 26 through Newry. Even state highways were impassable from the incredible erosive power of mountain rainstorms. Almost everywhere in the state suffered losses of one kind or another, and in some cases, the losses were devastating. Shop owners lost their entire inventories and faced massive rebuilding costs. Somewhere around half of our working waterfront was damaged. Although Maine was already planning for climate impacts, this spurred a new level of urgency across the state. Since 2019, Maine has produced 2 full climate plans with extensive stakeholder engagement. The plans give us a roadmap for how to tackle our resilience challenges, as well as make progress on reducing our emissions. As a result of the climate plans and general agreement that communities need a more coordinated one-stop shop for technical assistance and grants, a new office is being formed. As the first director, I'm standing up the Maine Office of Community Affairs, which will include programs that address resilience, flood risk, housing, land use planning, volunteerism, coastal matters, and code enforcement. So can you see some connections to the landscape architecture community and all of these functions? I think we could do some great work together. The opportunities that this new office brings are providing a one-stop shop for communities, aligning incentives and policies to achieve more consistent results, and reducing administrative burden on communities and service providers. We heard from a lot of people in communities who are trying to access state services that there were too many departments, too many programs, too many points of contact, and it was just so hard to really spend their time doing the work instead of trying to figure out who to talk to and find the resources. So this is an opportunity to change that trajectory and put community experience first instead of the way it's been. And because of the terrible winter storms, the governor convened a commission to create an action plan for resilience. The report was released this month, and in it, MOCA, which is the acronym for our organization, has a very long to-do list to get started on, and it'll be in partnership with many organizations. Some of the tasks will be major projects, but a lot of the work that is relevant to our discussion today is smaller. It's groups of local folks in small towns trying to move their communities forward in ways that are going to mean safe, prosperous places for many years in the future. My contention today is that landscape architects have a role in that future. I think the key will be how to be invited in. Maine really needs your help. But to help, you have to have an invitation from the people who live in the rural places that are struggling with impacts, but may not immediately see the benefits of a landscape architecture approach. They often don't want to discuss these challenges under the label of climate, even though we know there's so many connections. Being invited comes from listening, patience, and accepting the values of the place. And I am certain that the majority of you already do this with your engagements. You're already listening. You're already careful about centering community values. I think it's something that takes even more sort of fortitude to continue that when dealing with the most rural communities, because their experience can just be so different from some of the places that we work in every day. We need to make it easy for small rural communities to see their values and tastes in potential landscape solutions to their resilience challenges, their housing challenges, their economic development challenges. Let me get your wheels turning by giving an example of where it has already happened. Van Buren, Maine. It's a little bit of a phenom. Have any of you heard of the projects going on in Van Buren? I know Jamie has. Oh, not too many. Okay, great. This will all be new then. It's on the northern border. So if you look at that map of Maine, it's like way up at the top, right on the St. John River. And like many rural towns in Maine, it had a strong industrial past. It's had a rough few decades of figuring out what their future is. And they were really struggling. They had really low morale. Their downtown was crumbling. And then they had a real stroke of luck, which is their longtime police chief decided he was going to fix it by trying to become the town manager. And he did, and he's amazing. This guy's the Energizer Bunny. I visited him. I asked him, Luke, how do you get all this stuff done? He says, I don't sleep. So he's been aggressively pursuing grants and partnerships to breathe new life into the town. And the residents have been right there with him, residents and the staff of the town. They've pitched in, and they are making stuff happen. And Luke has partnered with design professionals on several projects. So this is a sketch of their Main Street, a part of their Main Street that's being reworked as we speak. So this is a parcel of vacant land in town that quite a while ago, a subdivision had been taken out by flooding. And it was determined that that just wasn't a place that would be safe to rebuild housing anymore. So there was a buyout, people moved away, but it just sat there vacant. I think it eventually became town-owned because of the buyout. And people were really sad about it. It was a place that made them, remembered a tragic past, essentially. But Luke worked with the community to apply for a Community Resilience Partnership grant, and that program, Community Resilience Partnership, or CRP, will come up later, to turn this flood-prone space into a community garden with greenhouses, raised beds, and walking trails. This project sparked a lot of energy in the community. People are thrilled about it, and you can see it under construction here, but the raised beds are in now, and they're really looking forward to a great first season with a community garden. It's exciting. And Luke got that idea from visiting his daughter in Vermont and seeing their community garden, and it was this, neat interchange of ideas. So Van Buren has so many other exciting projects underway: a downtown plan, an amphitheater, a digital community hub, and so much more. And I want to read you a few of Luke's words, but I need to do it from a piece of paper because I can't scroll on that thing. So let me find the right slide. Just one second. And I want to make sure I get it right because he was so eloquent. So Luke said, in Van Buren, our work with landscape architects through the Citizens Institute on Rural Design Initiative, a former program of the National Endowment for the Arts, was transformative. These professionals were not just consultants, they were collaborators, listeners, and visionaries who helped us reimagine underutilized public spaces into opportunities for connection, economic revitalization, and placemaking. Their expertise allowed us to explore how our town's layout and landscape could support broader goals, welcoming gathering spaces, small business growth, walkability, and cultural identity. This success was reinforced during our participation in the Maine DOT's Village Partnership Initiative, in which we had the privilege of working with Aceto Kimball. Their team approached our community not as a client, but as a partner, helping us see our assets in new ways and guiding us through a visioning process that balanced creativity with practical implementation. Their ability to synthesize local input into tangible, contextual design solutions proved invaluable in creating a stronger sense of place and purpose downtown. Luke also mentions collaborations with Drexel and Georgetown that have been transformative. As Luke mourns the loss of the CIRD program to recent funding cuts, he says that a new entity being created by Scott Schmidt, a Georgetown University professor who is an expert on design research, will be called the Rural Design Project to connect rural communities with design research consultations. The project is under development, but Luke believes it will be very valuable to rural communities. I looked at the website for that, and it's definitely under construction. It looks like Luke is an advisor. It looks fascinating. I'm really excited to see where they go with it. So Van Buren is not the only small town in Maine that has benefited from the involvement of landscape architects. Who in here has done a project in Maine? Yeah, there's so much good work that's happening. But it is unusual for small rural towns to reach out to engage landscape architects. When I spoke to a colleague who deals with housing technical assistance to municipalities, he's a colleague of mine at the state, he said, I think sometimes landscape architects are the missing link when we think about housing and community planning. I think that's a really profound statement from a housing planner. And he had a specific suggestion. having some form of technical assistance would be helpful in helping communities engage with the possibilities. He gave an example that a low-hanging fruit that I would have loved in the 2019 to 2022 period is a good design booklet on what a parklet is and could be. It was a bear trying to reach more than the dedicated few individuals that parklets and pocket parks could transform a downtown or neighborhood. That isn't just housing planning, but the intersection between sense of place and design certainly merged with planning for housing. So this, again, was a housing planner's view of what he could have used, just some simple TA materials. And I hear frequently from local leaders that they want models, they want model ordinances, they want example projects that their peers have done because the peers are the trusted messengers. They need some simple ideas about where to start. Here's another concrete example. I mentioned the Community Resilience Partnership, or CRP, before. So Van Buren used this fund to create their community garden. It's a largely state-funded program. There is some temporary federal money right now, but it's baseline budgeted into the future in the state budget. They gave out $8 million recently, and we'll have another round beginning later this year. The program lead tells me that the actions you see here, sorry, it's just a basic text slide, which would really benefit from the involvement of landscape architects, are some of the least applied for project types. So that's money being left on the table for these kinds of activities that landscape architects could really help with. So why are these projects, which are crucial to the sustainability of the rural environment and culture, not on the table? I see such good work happening on specific projects. Jamie Hark is going to talk about some in the lightning talks. LAs are doing great things, but my challenge to you is how can we make that effect go beyond individual projects in places that, again, my notes are sort of disappearing, so. How can we make that effect go beyond individual projects in places that already have a sense of the value of landscape architecture? Where can LAs plug into the policy and decision-making system to advance the principles that you know are helpful in making great places? Can you produce simple introductory materials that are not necessarily instructive, but are invitations to rural people to think together about how to bring LA skills to bear on the issues that matter most to them? I'll also share one recent experience that I've had, in fact, just yesterday. The last 2 years, we've been dealing with a rewrite of our comprehensive planning laws and in Maine, and it has been a bitter 2-year hammer and tongs public policy debate. And when we were on a prep call the other day, I was talking about the role of landscape architecture in policy, and it occurred to me, I really haven't seen much input from landscape architecture community in our comprehensive planning policy debate. And I thought, you know, we could really benefit from that perspective, the perspective of what's a constructive way to first think about place and build that sort of layer cake of like, what do you think about first? What do you think about second? How do you design for a place? So that's just a concrete example for me of, I feel like we're missing an important voice in the public policy sphere. So, in my humble opinion, Maine's a special place. And we want to sustain our people, our environment, our way of life for future generations. State government and so many committed individuals, municipal and tribal officials, counties, planning organizations, NGOs, and so many others are all pushing hard to get ahead of our resilience and climate challenges and to make sure that Maine stays Maine for decades to come. I think landscape architects have an important role to play if collectively we can figure out how to make sure you are invited in. I have lots of ideas about this, but the best ideas will come from you. So I look forward to talking with you during the day today, learning from you, and hopefully setting the stage for collaboration going forward. And I wanted to just, I was talking with Terry Dewan about this talk the other day. And you know, it's always good for stimulate, oh, my time's up, sorry. It's always good to talk with him to get sort of a stimulating take on things. And he sent me an email later, and he said he had this Robin Wall Kimmerer quote from Braiding Sweetgrass. And he said, you know, after our talk, I reflected, and I thought this quote was really apt. He said, restoring land without restoring relationship is an empty exercise. And I think that's just a really, I mean, our rural communities are truly wonderful places to build relationship. And I think that that can happen project by project, but I think you have a real opportunity to go beyond the project by project, get into the technical assistance sphere, do things that are inviting, become part of the public policy discussion to the extent you aren't already. And I think you can really affect the trajectory of how communities conceive of resilience projects. Are they armoring the shoreline and digging ditches, or are they creating place? And you know, you have something to say about that. And so I hope that you will consider getting involved in ways that maybe the profession traditionally hasn't, at least in Maine. And I'd love to talk with you about ideas for how to do that. So thank you very much for having me today.
Thank you so much, Director Horn. Being from New Hampshire, a lot of that really resonated, you know, being from a rural community myself, and we really appreciate your pragmatic advice and really look forward to continuing the discussion throughout the day today and in the months ahead. So hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer Martell, and I am the president of the New Hampshire chapter of the American Society of Landscape Architects. And I just wanted to say this is the 4th year of our Landscape Architecture and Climate Action in New England Summit. This whole thing started as an online event during the pandemic, and it just continues to grow year after year. And the heart of this is all of you, all of the work that everyone in this room is doing, and we think together about how our discipline, our community, helps our region get more resilient. So now, our much loved moment is the lightning talks. Is everyone ready?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Miles Connors. I'm the Senior Director with Parterre Ecological. It's very nice to look out into the audience and see some familiar faces that we've worked with. Parterre Ecological specializes in invasive plant management and native restoration in the greater Boston area. And we're in the process of really thinking about projects as we move up to Maine and also down onto the Cape, and really, thinking more broadly about the way that we work. Am I in the right area? So in this process, we're looking to, many of our projects are involved in residential work, right? About half of our projects are in residential. And then we're also working with municipalities doing green infrastructure and also working on urban wilds. And also a great deal of more like conservation work, working with trusts and land groups to do, woodland edges, a lot of meadow work, et cetera. So when this project came to us, this happens to be a project out in the old Army base out in Devens, Massachusetts. And it's a bioengineering firm that's UK based, and they are moving their methods over from the UK with this biodiversity metric, right? And they came to us having looked at this metric and determined that the metric itself was, can you hear me? Yes. The metric itself was in decline, right? You can see based upon this chart here that they started with this pre-construction diversity value at 90.72, and after the construction of this manufacturing building, there actually had been down around 31 points. So our challenge was simple, but to increase this biodiversity metric and find ways to meet those challenges. So when we arrived, the site had been hydroseeded with standard mixes that many of you as landscape architects have probably used. Showy wildflower conservation, New England erosion control mixes from New England wetland plants. But we approached this project after these areas had been hydroseeded, in yellow here with the wildflower, and conservation mixes in sage green and the blue with bioretention, to think about habitat value and how could we increase these areas in greater biodiversity and habitat value to increase that biodiversity metric. So the bioretention basins, they total about 1/3 of an acre on site. And again, they were hydroseeded with this erosion control mix that, the main species are rye, creeping red fescue, little blue stem, big blue stem. So we could, probably do better than that. They're also predominantly had just been mowed on site. So as you looked along the ground, you found all these native grasses and other native wildflower species that were just being mowed by the landscape contractor. So in these areas, we predominantly use landscape plugs and container-grown perennials that provide high value in that biodiversity metric, such as pollinator plant species. They were a mix, like this Eryngium jacifolium or also the Eupatorium over here. There's a mix between certainly a more mesic perennial and also more of a generalist wetland species that again provide this pollinator value. This was a lot of our work, is looking at individual species that support pollinators and other wildlife species on site. In the wildflower meadow that totaled over 4 acres of this site, it was hydroseeded with a New England wildflower mix, which again we increased by planting additional perennials. We planted over 5,200 landscape plugs and hundreds of container-grown perennials in this particular area, ideally increasing that biodiversity metric. And just to point out too, this is that first year of application of that showy wildflower mix. You get a lot of Rudbeckia that starts to come in, and the team here is actually drilling and dropping and installing plugs as we went through that 4-acre area. And there are species that weren't on the original seed list, right? So we really looked to high biodiversity perennial material in this open meadow that was not in the seed mix, such as this Asclepias tuberosa and other echinacea species. And then the conservation area totaled about 2.5 acres and was along the back of the property. It was hydroseeded with New England conservation mix. This area along the back of the site was also adjacent to an existing woodland and conservation land. And the composition of vegetation was a bit sparse in this area, predominantly invasive shrub layer with some gray birch and native cherry and other early successional species. But we also noticed a few remnant mature pitch pine in this particular area. So kind of looking up into a plant community type for this biodiversity metric, what if we could mimic a pitch pine scrub oak plant community in this location? Like picking up remnants of what already exists there and considering a plant community type that Natural Heritage Endangered Species Program labels as a priority habitat and natural plant community. We see this as obviously ecologically important as a rare plant community type. Typically composed of scattered pitch pine with scrub oak, but also huckleberry, lowbush blueberry, bearberry, sedges, little blue stem, pretty handsome plant community. And this is just the natural heritage sheet here that we pulled together. And that is also the successional planting that we started to do in that particular area. And then finally, looking up a little bit farther, the section of the conservation area that we also looked at in this particular location just off of Robbins Pond was an area that was also a natural heritage, highlighted as a natural heritage endangered species for this threatened blanding turtle. And we thought, would it be possible for us to create habitat value for this particular species? It is known that they, that they live in Robbins Pond, and what if we could create a nesting location for this particular species up adjacent to this, on this property? So we worked towards clearing and creating essentially like pits and mounds of open landscape that would accommodate the blanding turtle. So finally, thousands of native plant species that support hundreds of pollinators were planted. We planted to mimic an imperiled pitch pine scrub oak plant community and created potential nesting habitat for a threatened blanding turtle. So using this metric here, which is determined, we hope that it's not yet been created or inventoried, but our hope is that we make the approximately 120 units, which would be about 20 or so units above our metric. So thank you all very much.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ashley Robinson. I am a landscape designer based in Vergennes, Vermont. I used to live here, so it's really great to be back and to be sharing a few words on companion planting, what it means to me, my landscape designs, the environment that I work in, and really rethinking how we value plants, how we look at the functionality of plants, and kind of turning aesthetics on its head, so to speak. So we'll look at our roots and dig deep. So what do I mean by companion planting? Well, plants that are working in symphony, plants that are sharing resources, they're communicating with each other. We know a lot about how plants do communicate. There's a lot of information out there, but essentially, we know that they're in relationships, right? So we, as a human society, community, group of individuals, are in relationship, and we depend on each other for our success and rely on each other, right? So it's our impact, it's understanding our impact on the world around us in order to really create these cohesive, connected, and sustainable landscapes. It's also an exchange of resources, a feedback loop. All right, so I'm going to talk about a couple layers, then who's playing in what layer, and an example of a companion planting situation here. So first I wanted to highlight the design layer. So it's the layer that we all see when we're out in the landscape, right? It's the structure plants and the seasonal plants that take up that view. So structure plants are the canopy plants, the big shrubs, the large form perennials. They're the architecture of the landscape. And the seasonal plants are there to support these structure plants. They come and go. They're going to be visually dominant in their season of bloom. And they're, again, what we see. So the functional plants are really the workhorse plants. They're kind of the ones that I don't think quite get enough attention, and the ones that really do the heavy lifting. They're the weavers and the erosion controllers and the self-seeding spreaders, the ones that are the filler plants. So they really hold the soil in. They're doing a lot of that work. Okay, so here is just an X-ray vision of what's going on below the surface. So I just wanted to show you this quickly to just demonstrate the different resources that these roots are accessing, right? So you can just tell, and in a companionship, so I chose six herbaceous plants here, just for this example, to kind of keep it simple, but also to provide that idea that these are all in companionship. They're not competing with each other. So let's take a closer look at what I mean. So root to tip. For structure plants, I chose Baptisia australis and Eupatoria maculatum. So clearly you can see in this example, they're tapping into literally different root systems, different resources given their root system structures versus the fibrous root system of the Eupatoria maculatum. And then as a seasonal plant, in this example, I chose the Echinacea purpurea. So they're all companions, they're playing well together, they're blooming at various times. So these are the seasonal plants in that design layer, as well as the functional layer you see below. Okay, the real workhorses of the landscape, I think, are the ground cover plants and the filler plants, the ones that are those functional plant that live in that functional plant layer. Carex fopoidea, Geranium maculatum, Coreopsis lanceolata. So in this example, the carex and the geranium would be considered ground cover plants. And you can see from the fibrous root system of the carex that it's really reaching. It's going to do that erosion controlling that is necessary for that ground cover layer. The Coreopsis is going to throw a bunch of seed around in an open soil, which is very necessary for soil health. If there's any exposed soil, we really want to protect it and cover it to preserve our soil systems. And finally, the design layer shot of the companion planting that I selected here. So you can see root to tip, again, how they all operate together and within each other, within a healthy, connected ecosystem. Thank you very much. I always encourage you to go out and borrow from nature too, so look forward to meeting you.
All right. Good morning. How's everyone doing today? It's great to see you all, affiliates, former classmates. So myself, I'm Dan DeLongchamp. I'm a registered landscape architect in Massachusetts. I went to UMass as well, so all the UMass folks out there. I'm going to be coming at you from a different angle this morning. So I work for a manufacturer now. I've been selling site furniture for about 10 years, and I'm going to be telling you about how we're decarbonizing site furniture, how we manufacture. So I work for Vestor. It's a Norwegian-based manufacturer. And this is a little bit of an approach, a different approach than what we're doing in the US now, but they've been really chasing zero for a very long time in Norway, and they believe that everyone can make a difference in their choices in terms of stopping climate change. And so we, a number of years ago, were given an opportunity to work with our steel manufacturer in Sweden called SSAB, and they started making a fossil-free steel, which has less embodied carbon than it took to make that steel. And the way they're doing it is with fossil-free hydrogen that's been created with green energy. Steel production is about 7 to 9% of our global CO2 emissions. So think about that for a minute. That's a huge amount of CO2 that we're emitting from just making steel. And because we are a carbon neutral manufacturer, I've been doing that since 2010, we track every single number of every single SKU in our catalog, because it used to be that we would offset these numbers. And that was through offset programs, mostly like mangrove replantations, things like that, PV, solar energy. But in scope 3, which is materials, our largest CO2 was from the steel. So when we were given this opportunity to work with SSAB, we obviously jumped on that opportunity. So we're the first commercial manufacturer to use it. The reason this is important, because we talk a lot about recycled steel, and it's a huge component of LEED. If you've worked on LEED projects, you're always chasing recycled content, 20, 30%. But the reality is there will not be enough steel to build the infrastructure that we need in our world just by recycled steel alone. And recycled steel does have some CO2 component to it when you recycle it and ship it back and forth, and you have to still melt it down. So steel is very recyclable. It's the most circular material in the world. So we believe if we make a bench and we make it out of steel, and that steel can last for a very long time and then be recycled, and we've made it with zero CO2, that's a very good story. Like I said, it's our largest input. So this is sort of tracking from SSAB. They're telling us how much steel we will need to build our infrastructure. And of course, we're all in landscape architecture here today. We don't want to stop building projects, so we want to just do it in a more sustainable manner. And this is essentially a little quick graphic of how they do it. They've basically just eliminated the coking process. So if you're familiar with steel production, you've seen some of the old steel plants around Pennsylvania, Philadelphia. You've seen these huge rows of buildings which were coking steel. They were taking the raw ore and breaking it down into a firmer product, which they could then put into a blast furnace and make the steel product. So it's sort of a two-part process. They've replaced that with electricity and hydrogen, and the byproduct is water. So we're excited to be part of that. And so we partnered with one of our designers, Emma Elbers, and designed the world's first piece of furniture designed with fossil-free steel. And so now this is out there in the world. And so we're just very excited about it. You can see the little tag we put on there. We're starting to roll this into more furniture as well. And the goal, obviously, is to be eventually chasing zero. You know, we're trying to go down and down and down to that number where we get it as low as possible. So these are product passports that we've created. You can kind of see there's an 84% reduction in the amount of CO2 for a similar type of bench. And so that really starts to add up. You talk about a landscape project, you have 10, 20, 30 benches. This is how much CO2 you're emitting. So you can track a lot of that. I'd shout out to Pam Conrad with the Pathfinder app if you guys are tracking that in your projects. And with that, I will yield the balance of my time. That doesn't look good.
36 million trees. We lose 36 million trees in US cities alone every single year. That represents about 40 billion in usable lumber. And that's not including tree loss in suburbs, wildlands, rural. $40 billion worth of usable lumber that we throw away, 3.5 times what we imported last year. 90% of that gets chipped or burned. That's a broken system. We're throwing away more than what we need. And yet, there's still an incredible amount of demand for tropical hardwoods. The rainforest is depleting. The oceans and the rainforest are the Earth's lungs, and we can't afford to lose a lung. 3 weeks, 3 days, 3 minutes. You can survive without food for 3 weeks. You can survive without water for 3 days. But we've got 3 minutes without oxygen. We can't afford to lose a lung. Luckily, the Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species, CITES, has finally listed Ipe and Kumaru on the Appendix 2, which is one step away from critically endangered. So starting in August, there will be more regulations, and that product is going to start to be more limited, and they're going to watch and genuinely take care of what is coming out of the rainforest. Hi, my name's Zach Tolbert. I'm a landscape architect by trade. I'm here with Cambium. We are transforming the wood supply chain across the US, creating solutions and supply chain options to take those salvage trees, put it into the lumber supply chain, and help us decarbonize our specs. I'll be at the Division 32 booth later. Come find me, we can chat more. But outside of just removing tropical hardwoods from your specs, because we, the design community, can play a huge role in that. Stop it, allowing it on specifications, stop allowing it as an approved alternate. But beyond that, and beyond using salvage wood first, how else can you change and decarbonize your specs? So like 100 years ago, a mill would not take a tree that was less than 36-inch diameter. We still had a lot of old growth trees, and they could get so much lumber out of a huge tree that, it was easy. So they just throw out the little stuff. Today, now that we've cut through all of our old growth trees, we're not getting logs this size. And so when you're milling something, you're gonna lose the center of this tree to a railroad tie or to pallet manufacturers. So you're left with a square donut. So one of the things, we don't really touch grade or grain as a landscape architect. We're just specifying the wood and the size. But size can have a critical impact on how sustainable your specs are. You make that a square donut, you're not going to get that many 2x12s out of that. Honestly, 2x6s are hard to get out of the average size log. You saw that slide from Maine in the forestry industry. That's the size logs that we typically get. You're not getting a lot of 6-inch wide material from that. So think about, do you really have to have a 2x6 or a 2x8? What's wrong with a 4-inch wide decking board? It actually can cut physically less, so it's actually going to be a better performing product. And just making that one switch down to a 4-inch wide product instead of a 6. We're stuck on 6 as an industry, it's in our brains. You can make a big difference by changing that. And you might not hear it directly from a mill, but they will love you. That's going to increase their yield and support those small mills that you saw in Maine. They're going to be able to stop throwing away and burning so much material. It really can make such a big difference by just expanding your specs, pushing to use salvage wood before fresh cut forests. Let's save those forests and keep them absorbing carbon, and let's take a stand against tropical hardwoods. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Is this? Oh. My name is Estella Reganet, and with me is Luisa Oliveira. On behalf of the BSLA's DEI committee, we're excited to be here today to talk about allyship, a topic that's important to both of us professionally and personally. Specifically, what it means to be a good ally within our field. But before we dive in, let's be clear about why this conversation matters, especially now.
We're in a moment where diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging efforts are under political attack. Book bans, anti-trans legislation, ICE raids separating families without due process, and attacks on international students in our universities. We are witnessing a backlash against equity work across the country. Landscape architecture does not exist outside this context. In moments like these, allies matter now more than ever. We need to be the people who are willing to stand up, not just when it's easy, but when it's risky, not just in statements, but in practice. Allyship isn't about being kind, it's about being courageous.
So what is an ally? An ally is someone who actively supports and advocates for individuals from marginalized or minority groups without being a member of those groups themselves. But allyship is not a label you give yourself. It's a practice, an ongoing commitment that you must do consistently and consciously. And it starts with a question: who is marginalized in our workplaces, in our communities? Until we can name who is being left out, whether it's our first-generation BIPOC colleagues, disabled community members, non-US citizens, those disproportionately affected by natural disasters, et cetera, we can't begin to shift the systems that exclude them.
Here are 5 principles that can help guide allyship in practice. The first, self-reflect. Examine your own position, privileges, and biases. Ask yourself how your experiences differ from others. And be honest about the blind spots you may have and the power dynamics you benefit from.
Next is listen. Listening is more than hearing. It means absorbing what others say without immediately offering a solution or defense. It means allowing others to speak without judgment and being okay to sit with discomfort.
Also, educate yourself. Don't rely on those from marginalized groups to explain things to you. Take the initiative, read, research, learn, especially about the histories of injustice in our profession.
Fourth is to observe who has power. In meetings, in hiring, in design charrettes, look at who's being heard, who's being ignored, who doesn't feel empowered to speak, and who's missing.
And finally, share power and use your privilege. Make space for others. If you're in a position of power, pass the mic. Advocate for change. And remember that using your privilege often means stepping back.
This is how you can commit to being a better ally. This isn't a one-time act. Push for inclusive policies and practices on your teams and in your projects. See your colleagues as full people with lives and histories that shape how they show up. Model your values and work to center equity as part of the design process, rather than an afterthought or a box to check. Take accountability without defensiveness, and extend forgiveness when others make mistakes but are doing the work to grow.
Now, how can we bring this into our landscape architecture practices? First, learn the histories that we as landscape designers and allied professionals inherit and shape. Redlining, displacement, environmental racism, all embedded within the history of the United States. Second, advocate for public spaces that truly serve everyone, not just those who already feel welcome. Engage in community partnerships that are built on mutual respect and reciprocity, not extraction. Admitting our work doesn't always allow for extended community engagement processes. Find ways to invite the community to participate beyond the lifespan of a project. Be honest with your client about whose feedback you are not getting. And finally, foster an office culture of empathy, growth, and mentorship, where everyone feels they belong. In fact, mentorship is one of the most important ways to help people succeed.
Allyship is not perfect, nor is it easy, but it is necessary. And this is our open call to our community to commit to allyship as a continuous practice, one in which we're all trying our best. To end, we would like to announce that the BSLA DEI Committee is launching a mentorship initiative starting this summer, so you can use the QR code here to sign up as a mentor or a mentee. And during lunch, we'll also invite you all to stop in room 138 to continue the conversation. Thank you.
All right, perfect timing. We'll talk about mentorship and internships now. My name is Jen Lawrence. I'm the executive director of the Hideo Sasaki Foundation. Make sure I'm doing this correctly. We were founded in 2000 to continue Hideo's legacy of teaching interdisciplinary design and creating more opportunities for access to the design industry. And in 2018, we created a new vision to expand design equity in Greater Boston. Our programming is organized in 3 pillars. We have grants, education, and public programming. At the foundation, we believe that design has the power to address the most urgent challenges facing us, and that design can be an agent of change. And through our design grant, our design education pillar, we host the Summer Exploratory Experience in Design, SEED. It's so lovely to see folks here who have participated in that program. Our Designing for Environmental and Social Impact, which is DESI, and multiple university-based internships for college students. Since 2018, we have employed over 190 high school students as interns in both of our SEED and DESI programs, and 142 of those students were new to the program coming in. They'd never heard of design as a career in an industry. And 50 then returned for multiple years. And of those, 29 are now enrolled in university programs or are practicing, and another 10 are joining the college career trajectory this fall. We also have over 40 college-aged interns that are teaching assistants, and they're learning through their internships to both build their portfolios, but they're honing their own design skills through this mentorship of high school students. So what is this? What am I talking about? We think of a job as a position where you do tasks for your employer, you get paid. For high school students, it tends to be very transactional. An internship, on the other hand, is a short-term professional learning experience. It offers practical work related to a student's field of study or their career interests. In our practice, meaningful internships are intentional about how the individual is growing through the tasks they're given and the environment they're in. They're critical to growing communication skills, building a network, and they take time. They involve an iterative process of working with a student to ensure that the skills they're practicing are valuable to their own professional and personal development. And we also believe that meaningful internships should be paid, especially if we want the industry to be more representative of the communities in which we are designing. Unpaid internships often discourage students from applying, and they perpetuate the socioeconomic inequities that we were talking about earlier. So what do you get? Internships are great experiences for employees. those at your firm, they get to work with the next generation. They get to engage with their community. They're an opportunity for growth both of your company and of the student. And over, we hear that the employees we engage with and partner with want the opportunity to work with young people, high school students, college students. They get a lot out of the experience. They grow themselves professionally, and they are able to give back to their communities. And not for nothing, the ideas the students come up with are incredible. They're innovative, they're creative. If we want to actually diversify our industry across the board, employers have a responsibility of growing and investing in the next generation of professionals. Meaningful internships ensure that the up-and-coming workforce is more prepared and innovative than the previous generation. That said, it doesn't mean you have to host an entire program like we do, but there are really easy ways you can get involved. First, we're in New England, the land of universities. Host a co-op. A co-op is an easy way to begin the journey. You can share an intern with another organization as you prove the concept internally at your firm. You can share the load with a neighbor, a client, a vendor, find something that works for you. Partner with an existing design education program. If you're in Greater Boston, join me out there, I'll help you. If you're ready to host an intern yourself, there's lots of programs in Boston that we can help you with. Again, find me outside. And of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our program. Become a partner of the Hideo Sasaki Foundation. We have opportunities for site visit hosts, career panels, mentors, project advisors, and our program runs over the summer. And in case you need any more convincing, this is what a high school student did. Like, it's unreal. Look at that. And it takes a village. This is all of the folks that make our program run. Thank you. Lots of you are in the room. And finally, I've got to just tell you, if you're interested in looking at community-led design, please come to Pitch Night next week at the Sasaki offices, 110 Chauncey Street, 5:30 on Thursday. And the last one is, if you want to learn more about who Hideo was, there's a new book out, and also online, you can get the book there, and online you can find the most recent conversation that author Dick Galehouse, Principal Emeritus of Sasaki, put on last week. So thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'll be watching the chat in case there's any issues with my AV, but thanks for having me despite my need to be virtual. My name is Tyler Refslin. I'm the manager of Applied Ecology at Wild Seed Project. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. We're a small member-supported nonprofit located near Portland, Maine, and our mission is to inspire people to take action in increasing the presence of native plants grown from wild seed. Our vision is really to help people create landscapes that are abundant with native plants such that they, help safeguard wildlife habitat, support wildlife biodiversity, and mitigate the effects of climate change. Next slide, please. And we were founded on the belief that with a little guidance, anyone can grow native plants from seed. No special knowledge, equipment, or big budget required. And as with the title of this lightning session, people are seeking ways they can take action to combat the crises of climate change and biodiversity loss. In other words, accessible outlets that go beyond the conventional asks of donating time, money, or land. So we emphasize access to knowledge and skills, teaching the teacher how to sow, grow, and collect seed. This is what we call the seed-to-seed cycle. And this has been met with immense participation and enthusiasm, not only from our members, but from the public at large. Next slide, please. The core ways that we engage in community include our seed stewardship program, where we collect wild seed, we store it, and we propagate it in living seed banks. Our community seed gardens, which are these demonstration landscapes that we install in public places, libraries, municipalities, land trusts, various educational workshops like this seed sowing workshop, the picture on the right, and our school and youth programs, which includes an annual free Seeds for Teachers program where we mail seeds to schools throughout the state of Maine. As we do this work, we've discovered that native plants are as much a literal thing that we care about as they are a metaphor for the rich type of connections that we want to help rebuild in our communities. For example, we've had folks attend multiple workshops at a community seed garden where they've made friends, become invested in the development of that particular garden, from its design to its planting. And what's great is that once the public that the public can return time and time again to this space and collect their own seed once the plants are mature, and then they know what to do with it going forward. Next slide, please. We're living in a moment of great disconnection. I think a lot of us can agree, caused in large part by how our cities have been historically designed and how our lives have become increasingly online. Walkable neighborhoods are a luxury. So instead, you might find yourself walking on a sun-baked strip without a sidewalk, like this picture on the left, the curb decorated with pesticide application signs. It seems we prioritize what's on the road and what's online at the expense of the human scale. Next slide, please. But we really need the human scale to connect with our neighbors, both human and non-human, and to our shared place where we live, work, and play. We think that reconnecting with and celebrating our local ecologies is a crucial part of this reconnecting with the human scale, as well as preserving it going forward. So working the earth and planting seeds, and then counting all the incredible critters that come and find us. Next slide, please. Where we're going from here is that as an organization, we're focused on a real need in our community and other organizations that partner with us, which is increasing the availability of native plants grown from seed through the expansion of our Native Seed Center in Cape Elizabeth, Maine. And to support this work, we sell packets of native seed for distribution to communities. We host an annual plant sale in early September. This year, it's September 6th and 7th to support our work. And as I mentioned earlier, development of living seed banks, which help us expand our capacity to provide more seed of more species to the people that we work with. Next slide, please. If you're interested, I encourage you to visit our website to find additional resources and learn of upcoming events that we're holding in Southern Maine. And if you want, please check out our guides. These are annual print guides that we make every year. This year is all about gardening for biodiversity. And, you know, hopefully they could be helpful in your work to bring more native plants into your projects. And with that, I'd say thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hello, hello. Hi, my name is Mark Winterer. I'm the co-founder and owner of Recover Green Roofs. We are a design, build, and maintain green roof construction company, and we've been creating rooftop spaces that people and plants love since 2009. Thank you so much for having me here today. I would like to show you how you can engage your community through sustainable urban rooftop design. Which button do I push here? There's only one. That helps. So this story starts back in 2020 when Barb Bryant, a Cambridge resident, called our office. She talked about some raised planter beds atop her old block concrete garage and talked about using an extension ladder to carry all her stuff up to the roof and carry all her harvest down to the ground. She was calling because she was ready for a safe and easier way to grow tomatoes. After a quick feasibility analysis, we found that the garage was not strong enough, the roof leaked, and there was indeed no safe access. Solving all three problems required close collaboration with Barb, with her neighbors. You'll see her neighbors in the next picture. The city of Cambridge, design professionals, all of you in the room, engineers also, our vendors and contractors, and we designed and built a new structure that could support a rooftop garage, support a rooftop farm, harvest the rainwater, provide proper and safe egress, and keep the building dry. Barb calls this the Henry Street Farms, and it shows how we can harness plants to cool our cities, clean the air, and manage weather extremes. By inviting her neighbors and students, she has elevated the roof to communal space for learning and connection. Rooftop urban farming has grown a lot in the last decade. Whether on a small block garage or a major league ballpark, green roofs maximize the available space that we have. The Fenway Farm story starts back in 2013 when the Red Sox called our office and talked about a roof they had above Gate A at Fenway Park. It was highly visible, ugly, hot, and prime location for a green roof. When Linda Henry got involved, she raised the bar and envisioned a green roof that could engage and feed the Red Sox community and neighbors. 2014 was a year of designing a system that could support edible plants within the parameters of a historic landmark and the oldest ballpark in America. And we were given 4 weeks before the start of the 2015 season to install a new membrane, to cover it with synthetic turf, assemble over 70 volunteers to convert thousands of milk crates into planters, move them from the ground on the east side to the roof on the west side, and plant them all in time for opening day. April 13th, 2015, every milk crate had tiny little seeds waiting for the first pitch, and now in 2025, the farm just celebrated its 10th birthday. Fenway's neighbor, Boston Medical Center, was inspired by Fenway Farms and hired us to design and build a similar 5,000 square foot rooftop farm on their Boston campus power plant. BMC is known as Boston's hospital and serves patients most in need and often the hungriest. The hospital knows that food is the best medicine, and they took it a step farther by giving patients access to plants' therapeutic healing powers. BMC hired us to expand their rooftop operations for their second location, the Newmarket Square Farm. This allowed us to, we did a couple upgrades, including wheelchair accessibility, and both projects contribute to BMC's Nourishing Our Communities program. Harvests go to local nonprofits, including Rosie's Place, a women's shelter. This farm brings valuable green space to the Newmarket district, addresses food insecurity, and brings culturally relevant food to the community. I'm over time, so thank you very much. Hold on. Barb Bryant, the owner of Henry Street Farms, is here today. Hi, Barb. She loves her roof. And please come meet with us after the talks, or she's graciously invited us to her house in Cambridge for a BSLA field trip, July 10th. You can come for yourself, and we can talk about turning your roof into a story. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you. I'm Louis of Louis Fusco. Oh, hi. Gotta use this. Hi, I'm Louis of Louis Fusco Landscape Architects, Connecticut and New York ASLA chapter member. Over 28 million adults and children worldwide are held in forced labor and human trafficking, with a direct link between areas of environmental degradation and of human abuse. Where are the products we specify produced? Who is producing them and under what conditions? As architects and designers, we have 40% more purchasing power than the average person. The choices we make have a sustainable environmental impact as well as a social one for the people manufacturing and producing those products. As landscape architects, we have a professional responsibility to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. It's time to take a closer look at those working to provide the materials we specify. 4 years ago, I attended the Design for Freedom inaugural summit at Grace Farms in New Canaan, Connecticut, instantly changing how I researched and selected construction materials. I had dinner that same week with a close friend, one of the largest distributors of natural and manufactured tile and stone in the country. While sympathetic to the forced labor and child abuse issue, like many, his immediate response was, "That's unfortunate, but how else would they feed their families?" Amar Lal was rescued at age 6 from a stone quarry by a human rights activist who convinced his parents to allow him to be educated. He now practices law at the Delhi High Court, specializing in child labor and abuse cases, while continuing to work as a child rights activist. I had the pleasure of meeting and hearing Amal speak at this year's Design for Freedom Summit. His message that resonated the most with me was not to underestimate the ingenuity and resiliency of those workers trapped in this vicious cycle. If given the opportunity, they will succeed. Landscape architects can make a difference through carefully educated design and specification decisions, outlining requirements for fair trade materials and specification process. Identifying risky, raw, and composite materials as well as global hotspots is the first step. These are the locations of the greatest environmental and climate abuse. We have to avoid the slave discount when a client selects a piece of a particular material that you know is coming from one of these locations. We need to understand the relevant certifications and standards that we as professionals should be aware of when researching and specifying products. We can then collaborate with product manufacturers to ensure ethical sourcing, sustainable practices, and end to modern-day slavery. It's beginning already. Many of our big manufacturers are listening to us and doing this work. As landscape architects, we have the power to disrupt that chain. If you plan on coming to National this year in New Orleans, I'll be speaking alongside Bridget from Grace Farms. We'll be taking a deeper dive into the timber, stone, and rubber supply chains. We are either part of the problem or part of the solution. Check out Design for Freedom and how we can combat the problem. If you go to their website, you can download their international guide. It gives you a good breakdown of how to work with specifications. Thanks, and hope to see you all in New Orleans.
Hi, everybody. Let's go back to Maine. We're going to talk about houses on the Maine coast. My name is Jamie Hark. I'm the one on the right in this photo. That's my daughter, Ada. I am a landscape designer and a resilience planner with Viewshed, a landscape architecture, GIS, and planning firm out of Yarmouth, Maine. I'm also a resident of Harpswell, Maine, which is on the other side of Casco Bay from Portland. It's a series of islands and peninsulas that makes up 216 miles of coastline just in town, which is pretty crazy. So at Viewshed, we go back to our roots in great design and visuals, planning and GIS, public engagement, to tackle a lot of the issues that the state is facing these days, specifically climate change, which we're going to talk about a lot here. Okay, so this is where our head's at right now. So Director Horn spoke a little bit about the storms that we faced last year. We had 2 consecutive storms in January, sou'easters coming from the southeast, that decimated the coast with high water and wave energy. There were over $90 million in public infrastructural damages, and over 60% of the working waterfront was either completely destroyed or incredibly affected. So after these storms, it's been about taking stock. What happened? What were the man-made structures and systems that did not work in these storms? What were the systems, the natural systems, the planting systems, ecological, geologic, that did work? I did a lot of exploration with paddleboard, kind of getting out on the water just to see how things are at in town. As a firm, we like to think of the coast not as a line, but more as a threshold. It takes up a lot of space on these sites, especially with these high tides that we deal with, or high to low tides. And so there's a lot of new building that's happening in Maine, surprisingly, on the water. I know less so in Massachusetts, but so we have this opportunity to think of the coast as a threshold and place homes in such a way that we're giving the water space. And in that space, you can put in a lot of amazing adaptive, resilient strategies. We're also taking a lot of the work that we do with our clients and we're bringing them back to the communities. I serve on Harpswell's Conservation Commission, where a lot of the plant lists that clients are paying me to do for their coastal residences, I think belong to the people as well. And so it's about kind of taking those lists, making publications, and giving them back to the community. And it's also about planning for the worst. It doesn't matter what your ideology was in Maine, how old you are, how long you've been in the state. We all saw what happened to our coastline last year. And so it's not about forgetting that or moving on, but it's about remembering that. And in our work, it's about including those high water marks in all the projects we're doing. DEP in the state enforces the highest astronomical tide line. I like to put in one line higher, the January 2024 storm surge layer. So here's a couple projects that we're really excited about. The first is Two Coves Farm in Harpswell. This is the last commercially operating farm in town. The Grady's came to the Conservation Commission because they rent the space. They have a farm lease through 2045, and they have a lot of coastline, a lot of erosion from the storms. They do not have any money for these projects. They do not own the land. They don't want to do permits, but they came to us thinking, what can we do? Viewshed took this on as a little pro bono assignment to do a coastal management plan for them, to just give them a little bit of a lay of the land and what they should think ahead about. So we went onto the site. I am a drone pilot. You probably noticed. But so taking stock of what's actually going on their site, what's happening in the upland, what's happening to the slope itself, but then also what's happening in the water. And so we came back to them with some proposed strategies, and these are all ones that would not require permitting, largely would not require a lot of money, different grazing patterns, leaving buffers, and I was called out there actually a week ago because of a new landslide on the coast, and so there's a lot more work to do, and we're evolving the land trust to get some of that work done. Finally, a project in Long Point in Harpswell on Great Island. The client came to us after catastrophic damage from the storms in January, not from wave energy, but from high water mark. So this is a great project because you can master plan it in a way that's classically landscape architecture with your alleys of serviceberry and your Belgian block paving, but you can also have kind of emerging culverts to establish water flow, marsh restoration. And because the client came to us with wanting a wall, we were really excited to give them a living shoreline revetment, which I wanted to show you in progress, but we're still waiting on permits from DEP, which they're very excited about. So very quickly, here's some cool things that I'm really anticipating for this field. Working with multiple properties is going to be huge. The coast does not understand property lines, and we should be working with neighbors to implement strategies. All of this work is great in a design realm, but we need an entire new industry to support all of this. We need practitioners, we need nurseries, contractors, educators. I need people to give me core log oyster shells, all of that stuff. And then there's also this idea as homes as pilot projects. Maine's coastline is 5,400 miles, 88% of which is privately owned. So if we're taking on these projects and doing very small interventions, you have a really incredible pilot project that can grow. And I am over time. Thank you so much. I'm really excited to talk to all of you.
Good morning, everyone. My name's April Malley, and I'm here representing BSLA's newest committee, the Plant Sourcing Task Force. I'm especially excited to be here talking to you today because it was born right here in this room at Fieldday last year, after there was a whole lot of conversations focused on improving the nursery supply and also generating just learning opportunities related to plants, planting design, and implementation and management. We're a group, we met on Zoom. Our members are all over the chapter. I co-chair the committee alongside Anna Curtis Heald, and am joined by a whole lot of members who are landscape architects and professional landscape designers. We talk about topics of shared interest, and we plan and execute tasks related to those interests. The first of which we took on was making these two surveys. One is focused on folks who design with plants in New England, and the other is geared towards people who grow plants for New England projects. There is a lot of question. How do I go back? Can I go back? Not sure. There's a lot of questions in these surveys. They're hitting all sorts of, thank you so much. They're hitting all sorts of topics. Not every topic is going to speak to everybody who responds to the survey, so we encourage you to be selective and respond to what speaks to you. We're not sure exactly how we'll use this information, but we do know that we're going to try to share it with our nursery partners. And we're going to use it to plan out future educational opportunities. So please participate if you can. A lot of the questions look like this. They're trying to get you to share with us what plants you really like using and which ones you wish you could use more often. We're going to turn this into data, and we're going to share it with our nursery partners. This is not the only way to carry forward this conversation, and so we're going to continue the conversation this afternoon in a panel with 4 nursery owners that was organized by our task force. Through our meetings, we're starting with information sharing. We know that we have a lot of allied partners who talk about these topics, and so we're first trying to learn what's available to us and then work on sharing it with all of you. And so shout out to Gretchen and Amanda who are working on adding applicable resources to the BSLA calendar and cross-posting. We're working on planning our own events too. In process, we're planning trips to nurseries. We want to see plants where they are. We want to go to them and see what it looks like on the other side when you spec something. What are you really asking for? And we also want to plan trips to go see plants growing in situ. We'll come up with a better name for this eventually, but for now we're calling it plant-focused inside-out tours. And so if there's anybody in this room who's interested in sharing built work from a plant perspective, that means like before the project, the design of the project, where the plants came from, and who's managing it, please get in touch with me, Anna, or Gretchen. We're all working together. Also, in terms of resources, our conversations have made it like super clear that the best way of learning all of this is in practice. And so really focus on opportunities for especially young designers, but everyone to be fully engaged in a project's process. So that means getting out to the site before it's demolished so you could see pre-existing conditions, being involved fully in design and documentation, sourcing plants if possible, and then seeing construction, and then going back and visiting, seeing it grow. There's no replacement. Outside of the office, we hope you join us. We meet every fourth Tuesday on Zoom from 8:30 to 9:30 in the morning, or out in the field at one of the events we're planning. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to talking plants with some of you soon.
Good morning. I'm David Warner, Senior Principal at Warner Larson Landscape Architects, now part of IMEG. I'm going to ask for a quick show of hands. I think mostly practitioners are in the room today, but I did see some hands earlier of students. How many people in the room today are specifying or recommending products or systems in your daily work? Should be almost the entire room. All right, great. It's an obvious answer to that, but the students among us are going to be specifying that soon enough once you get into practice. Oops, I went backwards. Green is good. All right. So this is a future landscape architect about 50 years ago. I grew up on a family farm north of Boston. Now it's mostly suburban. And my grandfather on my mother's side was really a key influence in my life, instilling that land ethic that's been with me my entire career. You know, it was really quite an interesting experience starting work at such a young age, but I've been a workaholic since. Graduating from Cornell University in 1991. Any Cornellians here? I'm sure there are quite a few. Great. That was a recession. Any of you who remember that time? It was a tough time for a lot of us to get our feet in the ground as professionals. But ever since then, I've really been focused my entire career on doing community-oriented projects. So we did join IMEG, which is a national engineering and design firm, in February, really because we have a common purpose of creating positive outcomes for people, community, and the planet. So the problem statement here today that I wanted to point out is that access to healthy outdoor spaces is really a challenge in urban communities, and all kids deserve to be able to go outside and enjoy and have good, healthy activity. A lot of people are really focused on the limited resources associated with that. I'm focusing on surface choice. That's the reason why I asked the question earlier. Surface choice is really important in creating equitable access. So this is an example of a field some of you might recognize. I see Louisa in the front row here. This is a project for the city of Somerville. The city of Somerville, that bottom image there is showing a 10-minute walking distance to the Healy Schoolyard. Now this field is synthetic turf, and they chose that surface because it's creating a really important aspect to the entire inventory of the city for their field program, providing access in the highest density area of this part of the town, Winter Hill, for a community that really had been underserved. And that is what we're talking about in terms of equitable access. What this also does, when you incorporate select synthetic turf fields within a community, it allows their natural grass fields to rest and be maintained in better condition. So this comparison chart here, I'm not going to go through every single bullet. Most of us are probably pretty familiar with the trade-offs between synthetic and natural. The thing I really want to focus on is the fact that it's an all-weather surface, and it's replacing oftentimes in schoolyards that are mostly asphalt to begin with. It's creating infiltration into the groundwater recharge, and it's creating an incredible amount of use that natural grass fields just can't do. So it's really about the intensity of use. You can get about 3 or maybe even 4 times the amount of program use out of a synthetic turf field than you can natural grass. If you have lighting on it, that's where you get the higher levels of use, particularly going into the fall season. But it's also about the consistent playability. Kids play outside year-round, and you can't really sustain natural grass when it's dormant. We also look at the life cycle cost analysis on all of our projects to really help clients understand what that investment is. And this image at the bottom is basically the breakdown of what we did for a school on the North Shore of Boston so they could understand the trade-offs. This is using their real data on the field maintenance costs that they've been incurring so that they could see, based upon the level of use, the payback period, which is about 2.5 years after the installation of getting the costs equal, the life cycle costs equal between the two surfaces. But of course, some communities, Sharon, looked at synthetic turf as an option for the inside of their track there, and they decided to go with natural grass, but it came with trade-offs. So basically, they're using it just for their games. They're not playing on it for practices, and they can't play on it after a rain event. They're getting about 100 hours of use per year out of that field. We have been fortunate to partner with the Trust for Public Land on a project in the city of Boston, and they've been doing this in other cities for many, many years, where synthetic turf is just a tool in the tool chest that allows them to use in converting and making outside schoolyards accessible. So this Groove School here is a fun one. It's about it's a couple blocks from the Stony Brook Reservation, and it's the typical schoolyard in Boston, right? And a lot of urban areas around the city. You can incorporate trees and landscape and have a lot of other places within the site that includes biodiversity. Synthetic turf is just one tool in the tool chest. A couple more examples, another shot of Somerville on the right. But this project here in Brooklyn is also in a very high-dense urban area. And you can see, this was a Trust for Public Land project, not one of ours, but you can see how it's got a lot of diverse opportunity for outdoor learning and play. So as I'm concluding, I wanted to point out that we are hopeful that the Boston Scores project in East Boston will be on the Fieldday tours this summer. I think we're still waiting for confirmation on that. It is. Okay, great. So the executive director, John McConga, and Niche Engineering will be joining me. We'll be talking about these points here, using permeable surfaces. The fact that all those permeable surfaces are underlain with storage volume for that storm event, it's a really important concept to understand. That's flood mitigation for this entire community. It's a really successful story. And when you have a natural grass field, an important thing to remember is that root zone in the first stage of a storm event gets saturated. Thank you. I'm running out of time. Gets saturated, and so you get a lot of runoff from that. But synthetic turf allows the water to go through and recharge the groundwater. So here is the message. They're serving 3,000 Boston youth, and they're playing on it 8 hours a day, every day of the week. So hope to see you there at the Fieldday event this summer. Thank you.
All right, hello everyone. My name is Tom. I'm with the Waterfront Alliance based in New York City, though I am here in Boston. And I'm going to talk to you today about the Waterfront Edge Design Guidelines. So the Waterfront Alliance is a nonprofit organization based in New York, focused on the New York and New Jersey harbor. And WEDGE, Waterfront Edge Design Guidelines, was initially created after a series of developers reached out to the Waterfront Alliance and asked for their support, a letter of support, as their projects went through the community board process in New York City, for those who are familiar with that process. And so it started as this internal tool that was meant to help the organization determine whether or not a project was worthy of their support, whether or not it was creating the outcomes that they had in mind, and then it took on a life of its own. At the heart, the Waterfront Edge Design Guidelines are focused on resilience, ecology, and access. And what I love about this photo of Brooklyn Bridge Park by Michael Van Valkenburg Associates is that it shows the myriad of ways in which our waterfront can be useful to the community, right? So you have this natural shoreline, you have direct water access for the kayakers, you have some of the piers behind with the ball fields, including some synthetic turf, and then in the distance you can see the active waterfront as well, which we think is really important. We think ports are a very important part of this process. So these guidelines, and I think there are several people in this room who actually helped author these guidelines, so thank you for that. They initially came out and were coastal only in 2017. But since then, we have launched a new version of the guidelines, which are now applicable nationwide, including on riverine and lacustrine ecosystems. And at the core of the framework, it is a verification product that you can use for a site, and you as an individual can also become verified. And it focuses on these 6 categories: site assessment and planning, community access and connections, natural resources and sustainability, climate and hazard resilience, edge composition, and innovation. And this is an example of the types of projects that have gone through WEDGE so far. What I like to point out is that it's not just for those landscapes that we all know and love that are very famous and have very large budgets, like Brooklyn Bridge Park or Hunters Point South, but also for community parks like Starlight Park, which is a very nice, lovely waterfront park in the Bronx, or Jose Marti Park in Miami, which was the rehabilitation of a community park. Additionally, we've seen it used for port sites, recycling facilities, other industrial uses, including offshore wind. WEDGE has also started to appear as a policy solution in some places. So for example, in Miami, Florida, WEDGE is embedded into the municipal code for 2 districts, and you can use WEDGE in lieu of other guidelines. Additionally, in New Rochelle, and I guess it's not on here, but in a couple areas, WEDGE is a requirement for multifamily sites along waterfronts. And we're starting to see this expansion too. I've been working with the city of Denver, for example, on potentially implementing WEDGE as a requirement for the Platte River redevelopment work. So there are many potential benefits to WEDGE. I think that ultimately what I've seen as a landscape designer working on projects with developers and with communities is that WEDGE is great as a third-party verification tool for building trust with communities. So it's one thing to say that we're doing these community benefits, and when we go into a community, it's another if there's a third party who can actually vet those for you and gain buy-in with the community. Like other verification products, there are minimum requirements, though I want to point out that with WEDGE, it's not very prescriptive. So it's a narrative-based system. So you write a narrative about your credit, each credit, and you say, this is how we're meeting the goals, the spirit of that credit, and then you provide documentation. So for example, if we're talking about planting, you'd be surprised to know that we have to have not introducing invasive planting as a minimum requirement. We've seen it actually in some projects, but then if you gain points for having, say, 85% of your site native planted, you can just write a narrative explaining that, explaining what your goal was, and then you can reference to a planting plan. And then I just have a couple of really quick slides to show some case study projects. And I'm just gonna highlight a couple things that we really liked about these projects. So on Jose Marti Park, for example, they had, they daylit their baffle boxes. So they had these transparent covers so you could actually see through to the baffle boxes, which was incredible because then the community could understand how this park was facilitating the cleaning of water from their communities before it ended up in the river. They also used an innovative e-concrete product to mimic mangroves along the edge of the bulkhead where they were unable to remove the bulkhead, which then was a habitat creation for the manatee in the river. And then this park here, Riverfront Park in Wilmington, North Carolina, which was led by Hargraves Jones, they really went out of their way to find ways to site structures away from existing wetlands and to reconstruct wetlands, protecting that new adjacent development upland. So they also use this, and I'm forgetting the name of the product, but they use some really interesting shore stabilization products too to help with inundation. So these are just 2 case studies. I'm going to skip forward because I'm out of time. We do have WEDGE professionals all over the country now. We have 1,100 WEDGE professionals across the country, including some states. We need to update this graphic. And we would love to engage with you all. So we can provide lunch and learns. We can come talk about projects with you. So yeah, there's my contact information, and please reach out.
Sorry. Hi, all. I'm Mike Easler, the chapter president for Rhode Island. I want to thank all of these speakers for these incredibly dynamic and diverse topics. And thanks for everyone for joining these talks, including those people online. I can practically hear the ideas and connections buzzing through everyone's heads right now, but we need to go through a couple of short items before we leave and move on. Please take a moment to check out the workshop schedule. Like National, these are first come, first serve. They're in 4 spaces, this auditorium, and 3 glass-fronted classrooms outside. everyone today, or everything today is on the ground floor. So don't rush, but don't wait. For now, go outside and chat it up with a sponsor. Say hi, ask them what they're working on, thank them for helping put this on. Go say hi to someone you don't know. I know that some of these ideas buzzing around could pollinate some new ideas, some new concepts. So spend some time talking with people, and go grab some coffee. We'll see everyone back at 11:15.